All right, now we're going to wait for our dear friend Habib to join us. Sending him the link right now. As a matter of fact, team, be a good opportunity for me to get a little grooming in before he shows up. Everything's coming along nicely. Thanks to everybody who shared my little viral video that I put up about the impact just having my own crazy mustache has had on my life. I appreciate it. Matter of fact, I'll link it here so everybody can see it while we're waiting for our friend. All right, let's see. Sunday morning, 10:30 Sao Paulo time. We're going to be talking to Habib. He's an author, pundit. He's got a lot of things going for himself, and I'm really glad to call him friend. He's somebody I met. You saw him in a group issue that I had when I talked to a bunch of different people. And what we're going to do now is we're going to sit down and have a real in-depth conversation. You know, I know that the title sounds a little fun, but we're gonna go in that way. Let's see, where is he? Gave him the link. He said, I'm ready, I'm ready. So what I'm also gonna do, folks, is send out, I'm gonna pass around this link. And I want everybody, and while you're watching this, give us a thumbs up. I mean, I hope everybody leaves a question and a comment, but what I really want is a thumbs up. Let's see. Got my awesome Bane shirt on today. Bane is my spirit totem in the gym. Completely insane. You got to learn the history. Where is this guy? Text him real quick. Are you in? I apologize for the delay, people. Oh, wait, I just gotta. And then he says 2 minutes. All right. Well, let me do this. Let me catch everybody up on, excuse me, on what's been going on with me. Lately, you'll notice that I've been doing a lot more videos and groups because over time, I've realized I have a lot of friends all over the world who have these really diverse experiences. And what I'm doing is trying to bring a lot of those people together. I've really established myself as a writer and an editor with my clients and doing that. And in doing that, I don't just do this because it's business. I do this because I found one of the best talents I have is that I can connect people. I'm bringing people together who have, you know, only slightly overlapping areas of interest, but I'm able to bring friends together that ordinarily would never have met. And I'm proud to be able to do that. I'm glad that I have friends that are able to have these crazy conversations with me, and everybody walks home just fine. Everybody walks home as friends. Everybody walks home having learned something. If you saw what we did yesterday talking about immigration and the policies, and should immigration have a universal policy? Should we all talk about things as if coming into this country is going to be the same issue for everyone? Lots of different things like that. I want to know from everybody. Leave in the comments as well after you thumbs up. What subjects do you think I should also include? What do you think are going to be subjects that I should come into and say, hey, this is going to be interesting discussion? It doesn't have to be something big on a global issue. It can just be something small that we deal with in our communities. And what I'm learning is my guests are bringing me these great pieces of information. And the people that are sending me private emails are sending me these great pieces of information. And so I want to make it a practice to ask everyone, hey, what do you think is a good idea? Oh, wait.
Hello.
Do I hear someone breathing like Darth Vader?
How are you? Can you hear me?
I'm doing great, my friend. But my first request I'll have of you is, do you have earphones? Because it'll stop a little bit of the background noise. It'll stop a little bit of the bouncing.
Oh, okay. Yeah, let me get some earphones. Just bear with me for a moment.
Yeah, because I learned a long time ago that when I do these, I get a lot of feedback. Oh, so where was I? As I'm going to ask him at the end of this, I'm going to ask him, first I'm going to make it a point to ask him who I should bring on that he knows. And I'm also going to ask him, hey, what other topics do you think are good to discuss? Because I want to do two different ways. I want to have the one-on-one chats, the way I'm going to have with Habib today, but I also want to start having my giant battle royals when everybody gets to have an opinion and everybody gets to bring in these deep, controversial or nonconformist views. And I've been doing that through podcasts, but now doing it through Google Hangouts. Oh, here's another question I have for the listeners. If Google Hangout goes away, what should I use instead? I've heard some dirty rumors that apparently it's going to go away. And I know that there are going to always be places and people looking to replace it. But what do you guys use in place of Google Hangouts? You back yet, my friend? Wow, that's a well-worn chair. Is that your work chair? No,
it's
I'm
my
actually.
writer's chair. It's my writer's chair.
I'm not. No. I don't want you to think that was sarcasm. I'm saying that everyone who has something that they focus on has a place where they focus. You know, and if that's your writer's chair, I wonder how many millions of amazing words came out of the hours you spent wearing that chair down.
Many, too much, to be honest. But I'm in love with it. That's why I don't want to replace it.
Yeah. It knows who you are.
Can you hear me now? So I'm wearing obviously the AirPods.
Perfectly.
Is it perfect now? Okay,
perfectly.
Great. Fantastic.
So first,
I like the new look with the moustache.
You like the what?
I like it. The new look with the moustache.
Oh, thank you.
It reminds me of it's not Sherlock Holmes. There's one film that Quentin Tarantino made a couple of years ago. The Magnificent Seven, I think.
It was.
It reminds me of that.
The Hateful Eight.
That's right.
Well, I'll tell you where I got mine. I don't know if you're familiar with a U.S. Marshal named Bass Reeves, long since dead. He was okay. Well, what I'll do is I'll also link it into the. I'll link it into the not the description, but in the comment section, and I'll also leave it as a comment that we talked about Bass Reeves. He was the first Black deputy U.S. Marshal west of the Mississippi River. He worked in Arkansas, Oklahoma, and if you look at any pictures of him, he has this testosterone-fueled mustache, my friend, that makes weak men tremble. And I saw that and I said, "This is what I want." And after the holidays over New Year, I didn't shave, and I decided I'm going to try something new.
That looks good. It looks good.
Oh. So first, I want to say good morning. Where are you?
London. It's freezing out here. It's like -4. It's snowing.
You know, I lived in London for a short while, and I got to say, awful place to live. I was
really? Wow. Oh,
actually,
wow.
It's probably not good to start by insulting people who are coming in the doctor. Because here's the thing about London, right? I always have two reasons I tell people when they say, would you go live in London again? It's this giant metropolis of people and culture. And I said, well, listen, have you ever been hanging out on a Saturday evening with your friends and someone says, let's go get something to eat? You say, yeah, and you have one friend that says, listen, I want Chinese food. I know this great Chinese restaurant. The family just moved over from Shanghai. It's going to be awesome. Then you get another guy that says, no. My grandmother's best friend is Italian, and they have this restaurant that's got this beautiful Italian food, pasta made fresh every day. And you get somebody else that says, no, scrap all that, none of that. I found an Indonesian, Malaysian fusion restaurant, and we're going to go there instead. And everybody's kind of pondering, going with the pros and cons. Are you with me so far, my friend?
I am.
Have you ever been anywhere else in the world and someone said, let's go get some English food?
No.
Exactly.
No, I know. Yeah. No, but that's the selling point. I know English. I'm not English, even though I was born in the UK. I don't consider myself to be English. But the beautiful thing about London, to me, it's the best city in the world. Because, like you said, it's the metropolitans. You've got different cultures. You can live amongst. I mean, you can do what you want in London, to be fair. And I think it's relatively safe compared to a number of cities around the world. There's a lot of opportunities, even as a black person as well. So the thing about London in comparison to other cities in the UK, a lot of, don't get me wrong, racism does exist, but it's not as overt as it would be in other cities. There's a lot of opportunities. Like I said, you can live your life. People don't really trouble you. And a lot of the issues that, for example, like we mentioned before in our previous when we previously spoke about like Black Americans and what it's like to be black in America, a lot of those issues we don't really face in the UK, to be honest. Again, in terms of like police brutality and lack of opportunities and things like that, there's a lot of blessings in London, even compared to Brazil, kind of thing. So for me, even though I like to travel, go to other cities, I still prefer London. Overall, I would say it's the best city in the world for me, for my experience.
Well, so you mean, are you telling me that I shouldn't listen to the news and assume that London is full of youth carrying razor blades that are going to just slice my face open?
That's again.
Are you telling me that that's actually not true? Because I saw it on the news. It must be true, and the people on the internet said it too. So
again, it depends what part of London you go. So, like for example, the type of work that I do and the circles that I move in, I don't see that. I know it exists. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but you probably wouldn't come across those worlds and those people's kind of thing, unfortunately, because you're fortunately, shall I say, because you're of a certain age, because a lot of the knife crime which goes on is generally amongst, unfortunately, young black men, but of a certain age group between the ages of 14 and I'll say 21, 22.
Yeah, and but you're forgetting the one thing we can't forget. It's a matter of economic situation as well.
Of course,
one of my friends asked me the same thing. They said, "Well, wait a minute. Are you telling me that in Brazil, you're not just going to get murder, killed in the face?" And I said, well, I'm sure there are places like that, just like in the United States. But if I didn't live in poverty and crime-stricken areas there, why would I do it here?
Right.
And they look at you as if to say, oh, now I get it.
Yeah. I mean, I recently came back from Cape Verde a couple of months ago. And one thing about, it's a beautiful island, but you've got certain areas which is just full of, it's ghettoized areas where there's a lot of, again, predominantly black people. And if, for example, if you live in that type of environment, yes, you might be subject to robbery, see violence and all sorts of things. Whereas if you're in the more affluent areas, you wouldn't see that whatsoever. And there's a big separation between those two areas, which I think might be the case in parts of America. Whereas in the UK, there isn't really, like, there's some estates or like boroughs, you could say, which is ghettoized, like there's a lot of poverty-stricken people living there, but they're in very close proximity to the more affluent areas. So in London, it's very difficult to find out where like the quote-unquote poor people live or disadvantaged people compared to those that are relatively well off, because there's not like a big segregation between the two peoples kind of thing. So it's and again, in comparison to like Nigeria, which I've been a few times, or like Egypt, where I lived a couple of years, there's a big segregation between the haves and have-nots. So if you're living in an area where there's like a socially deprived area, you might be subject to a lot of these things and might see all of these social ills. Whereas in London, because we're all intermixed, it's kind of hard to explain, because a lot of people, like when they assume like, is this a poor area, even like they might think of Brixton, it's now become quite an affluent area where there's a lot of wealthy people from not only from the UK but from abroad kind of thing. So it's just a small pockets where you find that like knife violence and knife crime and like so-called gang warfare, but some of it's exaggerated, because in comparison to like Nigeria, Egypt, obviously Brazil, it's not that bad in the UK. That's not to say that it doesn't exist, but in comparison, it's not nowhere at the same level. So I would invite you to come to London, and hopefully you will change your mind, because it's not as bad as what many people think. And there's a lot of opportunities as well, business opportunities.
Oh, no. That I totally believe. It's just, it was never...
The food is not the best, though. I agree with that. The food is not the best.
Yeah, the food is just, yeah.
And the women is not the best either.
Yeah, and there's something about that place where there's no sunlight ever. Like, you can have daytime, but no sunshine. And so it's like, well, if I'm going to go there, you know, I've dated women from a myriad of colors and shades. But if I'm going to date a woman that's white, I don't want her to have that pasty look. I'd rather come from a country where the sun shines and she happens to be white. It's like if I'm dating a black girl, you know, it's the same thing. I don't want, you know, it's weird. But let's do this. I want you to tell everybody how, because you and I know each other. Tell everybody how awesome you are and who you are.
But now, have we started recording?
What do you mean? We've been recording since you jumped into a live. You
didn't know I didn't realize. I thought this was the preamble.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah, well, I'm still my authentic.
Well, hold on.
I'm still going to be my authentic self, but I honestly thought this was the preamble. I thought we was going to start recording 20 minutes.
I thought that I'm glad that you didn't say anything incriminating right now, my friend.
Well, I'm not like a two-faced person, so hopefully, the people that will speak to me offline is the same that they'll see me online, kind of thing. So I'm not going to say anything that's too incriminating. Hopefully.
Well, I have a theory that I don't say anything out loud that I can't afford to have repeated, and I say some pretty weird things, but I make sure, listen, if I'm going to say it, I'm 100% ready to stand behind it. My choice of words, the things I do.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I agree. So, so I should introduce myself. Sorry for people that are just listening and then thinking, who is this guy with a funny accent speaking? Great jumper. Okay, so my name is Habeeb Kande. I'm a British-born writer, originally from Nigeria. I've authored 6 books, non-fiction books on race, erotology, which is the study of sexual love and the art of lovemaking, and obviously on history, and also Brazil. I've done a bit of research in Brazil. I've been to Brazil about 7 times since 2014. I'm also working on a documentary about what it's like to be Black and Muslim in Brazil. I recently published a book called Kunyaza. Hopefully people can see that. The Secret to Female Pleasure. The book is about a traditional sexual practice in Rwanda in East Central Africa, which has the reputation of facilitating female ejaculation and multiple orgasms in women during heterosexual encounters. Basically, what this technique involves is the man uses the head of his erect penis to stimulate the woman's clitoris and labia minora in order to enhance pleasure and hopefully lead to you could say a gush of water known as female ejaculation or squirting. This is a practice that has been exercised for over 150 years. Some estimates say up until as far back as the 16th century. So another reason, a question I'm sure people's wondering, why am I interested in writing about female sexuality and female pleasure, is because...
Whoa, slow down.
Sorry.
My question is, why would anybody not be interested in understanding female sexuality and pleasure? I find it strange when guys like, wow, you really study that stuff? Yes, as a matter of fact, I do.
Yeah, I agree with you, but that's one of the most common first questions that people ask me. Why are you interested in writing about female sexuality? Why are you interested in writing about or studying about women's pleasure and how to why it's important for women to enjoy themselves in the bedroom? Now, again, what is like for people who have got a similar mindset, you don't need to explain that, but a lot of people do not have that mindset. A lot of people do not understand why it's important, because there is a lack of information. There's a lot of misinformation and miseducation in relation to female sexuality, even squirting, because when many people think about squirting, they think about pornography. And even a lot of Western scientists and sex researchers, they believe that female ejaculation or squirting doesn't exist. They believe that it's a myth. They think that it's urine. And I think that that's very problematic, even in the UK, where because female ejaculation is perceived to be urine or pee, however you want to call it, in British pornography, it's banned. So in British pornography, you would rarely see a woman experiencing the gushing flows of ecstasy, because it's perceived to be urine. And
well, my first question, for you though, I think is everybody, everyone has their bailiwick, everyone has their wheelhouse. My first question, as someone who's always going to give pushback, what qualifies you to say exactly what it is? In your book, do you have people with MD, PhD, letters behind their name that can say, yep, he's not just imagining it, that's what it is?
Yeah, exactly. So my book, and again, a lot of my work is, although obviously the layperson can read it, but it's generally aimed at academics or fellow researchers. So even in my book, when I'm not just speaking about the technique itself and what a man needs to do in order to enhance female pleasure and trigger ejaculation, I'm examining female ejaculation studies from other academics, particularly in the West, and the contradiction. So what you find is there's some studies, a number of studies, they estimate in the West again that 10% to 54% of women are able to experience ejaculation, right? Whereas in parts of East and Central Africa, like Rwanda, a number of the African sex educators there, they find that up to 80% of women are able to experience ejaculation. Now the question is, why is it that there's some women in some parts of the world able to experience ejaculation much more than other women? Is it because of biological differences in relation to anatomy? Is it because some women there is a lack of stigma in some parts of the world in relation to female ejaculation, which that's one of the findings I found from my research, and that's something that a number of Western educators and sexologists have found, that because a lot of women have been taught from a really young age that female ejaculation and or squirting is urine, is pee, they hold back. So many of the times when a woman is obviously sexually aroused or she's experiencing sexual stimulation either by herself, like with masturbation, or with her partner, when she gets to that point where she thinks that she might ejaculate, in her mind it's urine, so she holds back. And I'm sure, you know, people even listening, they might have some experiences where either they themselves, with a female partner, the woman said actually maybe slow down or she needs to go to the bathroom, or the woman holds back and she doesn't communicate that because in her mind and what she's been taught, and unfortunately amongst a lot of men who are ignorant about this, they think it's urine.
Now, so, wait, we've got a question. I don't know whether or not you can see it in the chat box. Our dear friend, dear sister, Roxana Bangura, who's a friend of mine, she's a world traveler. She asked a very pointed question. How is a man teaching a woman about their bodies? She said that very specifically, and I'd like you to address that for her.
Okay, so how is a man? The same way a man can teach a woman about the G-spot. Everyone accepts now the G-spot. The G-spot was named after a German sex educator in the 1950s. Ernest Grafenberg, who named it in the 1950s, and it was named after him by an American woman and an American man, John Perry and Beverly Whipple, in 1982. So a lot of the studies about female sexuality, men have been part of it. Now, again, in terms of like, how can I as a man, how am I qualified? I am not, of course, yes, I do not experience female ejaculation, but my research consists of reviewing studies on female ejaculation and female ejaculators, i.e. women. So most of my research is based on the findings of women. And one of the things which I wanted to raise awareness about is that when you look at a lot of Western studies about female ejaculation or female sexuality, we generally do not hear the experiences and the studies of African women, which is something which I had a concern with. So it's like they'll dismiss what a lot of the African women were to say, and they'll just concentrate on those findings or the sayings of certain, particularly white European or white American women. Do you understand what I'm getting at? Now, because a lot of that, and again, I want to make it clear, I'm mainly speaking about East and Central African women. I'm originally from West Africa. Culturally, it's very different.
Wait, hold on. You said you're originally
from West Africa, Nigeria.
Oh, you were born in Nigeria?
No, I was born in the UK, but I'm originally from West Africa. And the reason why I want to make it clear, because when people outside of Africa think of Africa, they think we're a monolith. Like, so I might say African culture, and they think it's all one and the same. Many people in West Africa and South and North Africa, they're not aware of this tradition. So they think, like, for example, female ejaculation is urine. Whereas in parts of East and Central Africa, because they've been taught from a really young age, this is part and parcel of the female experience. So again, it's not me well, I'm a vessel, you can say, but a lot of the information that I've presented in my book, these are the words and findings of African female sex educators known as Sengers. So again, it's a valid question. I appreciate the question asking that, because I do get asked that quite a lot. But then one of the things that I always ask back when people ask me that question, do people ask that same question when they see a white, middle-aged European man speaking about female sexuality? And I would say, I don't think that's the case. So generally, and this is something that I find amongst people of color, that there's a lot of pushback when they see, especially a black person I'm in my mid-30s. I'm not really young, even though I look like I'm maybe like 21. But when they see like a black person speaking about it, it's like, we need to see your credentials. I need before I accept what you're saying. But if I was a white middle-aged man and I'm speaking about a culture like Tantra, like in America, a lot of the educators of Tantra, they're not of Indian descent. But then why is it they're qualified to speak about Tantra, tantric sex, yoga, and they're not from that tradition? But people accept that. Do you understand what I'm getting at? So I think it's something that, especially a lot of people of color, we need to kind of, and that's why I wanted to write a book, because me, myself, again, I know when people see me, they might be thinking, oh, who's this guy speaking? So that's why, obviously, with the book, I'll put it down there and people can see the research that I've found. And obviously, I'm fully quoted different sources, so they can check what I'm saying. It's not just a case of me putting out these assertions on what I found from my own experiences, because that's not what it's about. It's not a biography. It's it's a collection of a number of sources, again, mainly from Western educators, Western academics, and also African academics, which we don't really find kind of thing. So for me, one of the main purposes is that I think it's important. And again, what I would say to a number of women, and I'm trying to, when I have these discussions with a number of women, is that, okay, why is it that, why is it as a man it speaks about female sexuality? Why is it that we haven't got enough women, particularly brown and black women, speaking about this issue? If you've got an issue, like there's a gap in the market, or maybe I'm, again, because I'm a man, so I might be missing some things out, then that's why, as a woman, you should come in and fill that gap and speak about the things that a lot of men aren't seeing, if that makes sense. And another thing that I wanted to say, because a number of women, and why, I'm not saying I'm the only person that can speak about it, but why I can speak about it, because I've done my research. I've studied this for over 2 years. Do you understand? And I've gone to international sex education conferences, and I'm not saying that validates me, but I've had other academics who researched, who reviewed my work, and they haven't found any issues with it, or where they have found any issues, then they can raise it, kind of thing. But I just find it quite, I'm used to it, so I'm not really frustrated, but I always ask that question: would you ask that same question if I was a white middle-aged man with a European name, kind of thing? So I just think people should keep that same energy where they're questioning things, and I think it's good that when you see someone that looks like you, what validates you, or what qualifies you to write about this work, you should ask that same question when you're reading these studies about female sexuality, female orgasm, and female pleasure, because most of them are written by white middle-aged men and some white middle-aged women who don't necessarily share a lot of the same things that you share in common with, if that makes sense. So again, and I actually want to ask you, not to put you on the spot, Yusuf, but I want to ask you a question. Can you hear me? Sorry, I think it went off the mic.
You know, I have a habit of always muting myself when I'm not speaking, because I never want my background noise or something I say to get in the way of what my clients or guests are saying. And so it's a bad habit to not unplug. So can you hear me? You muted yourself. You muted yourself.
Hold on.
There, now you're free. You muted yourself,
you hear me
my
now?
friend. Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. So, like, the title of our discussion, I saw it was labeled Squirting Girls. Now, to be honest, I was a bit hesitant with that title because I didn't want people to think that we're just speaking about underage girls, because that's definitely not what I'm speaking about.
Whoa. Where did you get the association?
Of pornography. Because unfortunately, in this climate, again, when I see, again, the perception, girls, people might think we're speaking about underage women, which that's definitely not the case. I want to make sure that's clear. But then also, when people think of squirting, generally a lot of people think about pornography. And again, this is one of the stigmas in relation to gushing, female ejaculation, squirting, is that a number of women think it's only women in porn can do. And unfortunately, pornography, there's a lot of miseducation, because we know pornography is about performance. It's about entertainment. It's not generally it doesn't reflect real sexual experiences between two partners. So a lot of the quote unquote squirting that we see in pornography is not real squirting. They use douches and things like that, or that is actually urination. So that's something that I wanted to address the misconceptions of. But then with the title Squirting Girls, I was thinking, wouldn't that attract maybe people who might be thinking we're speaking about pornography or underage women, which that's definitely not the case. So that's why I wanted to hear your thoughts of why you chose Squirting Girls.
Let me do this. First, I want to approach this not with sarcasm, but my first comment, I want to come at with compassion. It breaks my heart to know that so many other men are forced to live in a world where they're terrified of the slightest misstep, where they're terrified of what if someone said it the wrong way? What if someone, to be more accurate, what if someone intentionally misinterprets something I said to try to get me in trouble later? I'm fortunate in that I don't work for anybody. I've done my own businesses since I was very young. But at the same time, anyone who's not willing to ask, leave a question, I don't have time for them. And I'm going to just fearlessly go out there. The reason I said squirting girls, one, squirting is a word everybody understands. And it's less clinical than female ejaculation. Two, the reason I said girls, now let me back up. Do you know a woman, did you see, I spoke with a woman named Dr. Kim, and Dr. Kim is a woman who has a PhD in strategy, and she's a lecturer, and she authored The Thought Reframer is one of the nicknames they call her. Well, she sees it in my writing at YusefWateef.com. I often write girls, and sometimes I write women, and she challenged me on why I said girls. And I said, well, I say girls because when I say girls, I intentionally invoke young, bouncing, beautiful, full of optimism. And she and I had a beautiful back and forth. It was not about winning or losing. It was about both of us being able to stand tall on our points. What I challenge you to do is say, instead of being afraid of someone intentionally misinterpreting it, challenge it head on. Say, here's what I mean, and here's what I say. Now, I chose these words. I want to be clear to anybody listening. If you want to be mad at somebody about the title or anything on my website or my YouTube, don't be mad at the guests. This is my house. But I'm telling you, the world changes when you're no longer afraid of what other people think or say because you're ready to just deal with that consequence. And as someone who's dealing with female sexuality, I can only imagine the pushback you've already had. What do you have left to be afraid of? You wrote a book about female ejaculation.
What you're saying is true, and I appreciate what you said, and thank you for clarifying that. And I'm in a similar position where I don't really think too much about what people say, because if I were to think about what people were to say and I was fearful of that, I wouldn't have written the books that I write about. So there's a lot of misconceptions, again, that people will have when they find out a man is writing about such quote-unquote controversial topics, when in my mind, it's not controversial whatsoever. The same way you said earlier that why wouldn't a man be interested in this type of topic or this type of research, whereas a lot of men aren't, and even a lot of women, they're uncomfortable with a man speaking about it. So I do appreciate what you're saying. I think it's valid, and I'm actually going to take that forward, that if my intention is clear and I know what I'm saying, I don't need to keep questioning or make sure I'm just saying something that's palatable for other people, because I'm worried about people misinterpreting what I'm saying. So I appreciate your explanation, because that's something I'm going to take on as going forward as well, to be fair.
Oh, by the way, speaking of people misunderstanding, I tagged you. I posted this on Facebook and on Twitter. I want you to go and share those both on your timeline. Get a few of your friends here.
Yeah, I will, again, because I thought that I didn't realize that it was live. Let me do this now. I'll try and
yeah, if you see I tagged you in it.
Yeah, so if you can I don't want this to be quiet. So do you want to say something else, or do you want to ask me another question, or where did we drop off?
No, I was going to say, once you share that, you can drop back in. You know what I will do? What I'm going to do is I'm going to post in the comments. I'm going to actually post the conversation.
Mm-hmm. Let me do this now. Okay.
So what I'm doing is putting in the comment when she challenged me on using girls instead of women in certain places, so that everyone can see it.
Yeah, it should be. But the funny thing is that when a number of female sex educators that I speak to, they do say that squirting is the most frequently requested question that they receive from a number of women. But in the public domain, there's a lot of, like I said, there's a lot of misconceptions, stigma surrounding the topic. So it's one of those things that many people are squeamish, or they don't really want to talk about, but behind closed doors, it's one of the most frequently requested questions. I think the Pornhub last year, Pornhub released their figures of the most searched items, and I think female ejaculation squirting was 11, and then 11 2 years ago, and then it was number 6 a year ago, and 44% of women search for squirting more than men. So it's not something that only men are interested in. Women arguably are more interested than men are, kind of thing. So I think, again, it's important that this sexual experience is destigmatized, and I think more research should be done in relation to why it should be normalized and why people shouldn't be unafraid to speak about it.
Right on. Right on. I totally understand that. But my question is, when you decided to go from amateur to professional and start writing about this, What made you make that turn? What made you say, hey, you know what? I think I'm going to do this all the way?
Because I was quite frustrated with the lack of Black and African writers, researchers, like hearing their contribution towards female sexuality, because again, most of it was coming from a European or white American perspective. And for me, I'm like, okay, I do not need validation from other, like, so the same way you asked the question earlier, why it's, I mean, you qualified, you need, I mean, have you quoted PhDs and other people? But when we're talking about female sexuality, why do you, I mean, we're a society, we're obsessed with statistics. Why do you need a PhD to tell you what you need to, what a man can do to help a woman achieve ejaculation or experience orgasm? Because everyone's got different experiences. And a number of these, and again, this is not to throw a shot at any sex researchers or anything like that, but people that have had different interactions and relationships with women, why do they need someone that is studying in a lab to tell them about what a man needs to do in order to trigger female ejaculation or for help a woman experience climax? Because arguably you can see the everyday man or everyday woman who's had these different experiences, who hasn't got so much of these inhibitions, and especially people from different parts of the world who haven't got a lot of these mental blocks that many people in the West have, they should be asked, they should be questioned. Their findings should be, because it will help you challenge even some of your assumptions that you have. One thing I want to quickly touch on is also the perception of what a quote unquote perfect or normal vagina or vulva or female genitalia looks like. Now we know that in the West, the procedure called labiaplasty, which is basically where a woman reduces some parts of the elongated parts of her labia, because they want a quote unquote perfect, or like perfect. I don't want to say the word vagina, because even when we use the word vagina is not this. We use the word vagina generally to refer to the vulva, which is the whole female genitalia structure, when vagina is actually like the vaginal canal, but I would use the word vagina referring to the vulva, because that's generally how people use the word vagina. But so this procedure called labiaplasty is one of the most common and one of the most popular types of cosmetic surgery in the West, because women want they want a vagina that looks like a lot of the women in pornography, which is neatly tucked. You don't see the protruding lips, like the vaginal lips sticking out. And a lot of women, because of this, because a lot of, the female genitalia looks very different from what every woman, a lot of women are not proud of the way their genitalia looks like. Whereas when I compare this to the situation of female genitalia appearance in East and Central Africa, particularly in Rwanda and Uganda, they've got a practice called gukuna, which is labia elongation, where women are encouraged from a young age to manually stretch their labia, because for them to have long protruding lips, again, the total contrast to the West, that's seen as beautifying. And also it's said to enhance pleasure, because during penetration, the man's penis, when the man's penis with the skin-to-skin contact with the elongated labia, it increases pleasure for both the man and the woman. So their perception of, in terms of what is seen as attractive, and I'm speaking about the genitalia in this situation, is the total opposite to the West. Do you understand what I'm guessing at? And when people can
I offer a middle road and say,
okay, go on.
If you, in your studies, you see the difference between the Eastern and Western culture on what a perfect genitalia looks like for a woman, and some stretch and some trim. Mm-hmm. Could we, I always push for yours is fine as long as the doctor says it's okay.
Yes, that's
do we get to the point where we can say in any society, be it Eastern or Western, what does it take for us to just be able to say, you know what, hers is hers and yours is yours, go for it, it's okay.
That's my point, because I'm saying there's a lot of pressure in the West for us, again, especially on women, to achieve this so-called ideal form of what a woman's body is supposed to look like and what her genitalia is supposed to look like. When you go to different parts of the world where they haven't got these, I'm not to say there isn't pressure for a woman to look a certain way, but it's more like however you are. If you've got long lips, if you've got short lips, whatever. Now, but I'm saying that they prefer a longer lips, whereas in the West that would be seen as abhorrent. It was seen as shameful, if you understand, get that. So what I'm trying to do is to challenge people's even perception of what they consider to be beautiful, what they consider to be sexually arousing, because all of that is shaped by the culture and environment which you live in. And if you understand it, then you will challenge yourself. Why do I think this is? Because a lot of women have body confidence issues. Now, a lot of their body confidence issues is stemmed from what they perceive to be attractive, unattractive, desirable, undesirable, which is shaped by the culture which they live in. If they go into a different part of the world where, for example, like in parts of West Africa, where women who are, you could say, quite large and you could say maybe slightly obese, they are more desired than women who are very slim, which is propagated in like in Europe and parts of America when you look at the fashion models. So obviously a woman who has issues like with her body, she might be thinking, okay, I need to, you know, a lot of women, they want to lose weight, but that's a Western issue.
Again, I'm going to have to
challenge me on that.
Please do challenge you on that, because this is something that I deal with a lot of friends, because particularly as someone who came from a, in some ways not, but in some ways stereotypical Black home. I was a fat kid growing up. I started lifting weights, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, a whole bunch of other stuff. I can tell you, as a man rapidly approaching maturity at 40, I'll be 42 this year, one of the things that I saw that was one of the worst things to happen specifically to Americans, but also to Black people, was the acceptance of obesity, of being kind of fat being okay.
Okay, so I don't mean fat. I shouldn't have used the word obesity. I mean on a larger size. So maybe like a woman who's size 14. Size 14 is not seen as but that's a healthy body. It can be healthy. That's not obese. I'm talking for a woman. Do you agree with that or not?
Well, now we're getting into issues. Everyone has height and weight that you have to deal with.
Yeah. But my point is that the ideal body form, particularly in Europe, and I'm assuming it's the same in America, when you look at the fashion houses, like the high-end fashion, the women are extremely slim to skinny to some looking anorexic, right? And again, I'm not trying to encourage obesity and saying that to be obese is the ideal form, but I'm saying the pressures that women have, or like, for example, like a large behind, and people look at Beyonce and Kim Kardashian for starting this trend, right, in the Western world. This wasn't an issue in Black communities, like a woman having a large behind. Whereas, you know, you hear like in the mainstream media, like in particular amongst white women, oh, does my bum to look too big in this? That's not really an issue that a lot of Black women have. If anything, they want to have, again, I'm not talking about an obese, a gigantic behind, but they want to have a plump bottom, because that is something that a number of men are attracted to. Do you understand what I'm getting at? That's what I'm just trying to. Okay. I'm just trying to let people know that a lot of the issues that many people have is psychological, and a lot of it you can break it, because if you're in one part of the world where you think that, or even with men, like men have these issues where a lot of men, particularly in parts of the UK, I can't speak on the American experience, but they want to be extremely big. You know, they want to pump up, they want to be, you know, really muscular, because they think that's what they need in order to attract women. But then there's some women in parts of the world, they're not interested in that. Or if you're in a part of the world where that's what you've been taught and that's what you think all women are obsessed with, you're always going to think, I need to be bigger and bigger and bigger. I've got a number of friends who are similar to your size or even bigger, but they think they're small because they're comparing themselves to someone who maybe looks like the Mr. Olympia and Arnold Schwarzenegger. And even if they were to attain that size, they'll always still think that they're small, kind of thing. And again, that's a psychological issue that many people kind of need to address. Do you understand what I'm getting at? But like what you mentioned earlier, ultimately, if you're happy with, like, people come in different shapes and sizes, and I'm not trying to say this is the ideal, like a woman being thick or slim. People should be happy with what they are. But when you're in a society where they're just pushing one narrative, if you don't fit that narrative, then you can have some issues, and I think that's a problem. Do you understand? That's ultimately what I'm trying to get at. So I'm showing a different side to the different parts of the world where, for example, like I said, to have long labial lips is not seen as an issue. It's not shameful. Whereas in the West it is. But then if you're appreciating that in different parts of the world, people appreciate different things, and you wouldn't have such issues with the way you look or the way your partner looks. Similarly, if you're looking at, for example, you hear a lot nowadays where I hear this a lot, that, you know, because particularly in the West, that dark-skinned women in particular are not seen as desirable. That's not reflective around the world. There's some parts of obviously Africa where obviously most people are Black, that people appreciate dark-skinned women. Do you understand what I'm getting at? Now, I'm not saying that all those Black women should go.
So are you saying that our culture dictates out, well, okay, now we're going to have to go deeper. Not necessarily our culture, but we look at our culture shaping what we want, but we also have to look at colonialism shaping what is to be desired. For example, which country was it that just banned all skin lightening cream? And for the people who don't know, there are places where they sell a cream that makes your skin lighter which sounds like makeup, but it's not. It's actually bleach that seeps into your skin, pulls out any color that's in there, which over time, clearly it's not good for anyone. And I'll tell you my first encounter with it. I'm a Bollywood fan. I love Bollywood movies and the theatrics, and it's just, you know, my favorite Bollywood movie was Chandni. And then I found out some of my favorite Bollywood stars, you know, all people on television and movies, they endorse products. And they endorse skin lightening creams. And my heart broke.
Right. Well, the African country in question, that was Rwanda, the country which obviously I studied for my book. But prior to that, Ghana also banned skin bleaching creams. And Nigeria, which again, the country I'm originally from, 77% of women, according to the World Health Organization, bleach their skin. Now, growing up and even going to Nigeria, it's not uncommon. So like, it's quite interesting because when I heard people from America or even from the UK speaking about skin bleaching, everyone will say that's a form of self-hate. Whereas in parts of Africa, a lot of the women, they do not see it as self-hate. It's, if anything, it's for aesthetic reasons. And again, I'm not condoning it. I'm not encouraging it, but I'm not going to bash those women that do it, because the reality is, in parts, in many of those societies, a woman who has got a fairer complexion, it does lead to like, she's able to climb up the social ladder, like in terms of jobs, people seen as more acceptable, like an acceptable face. More men are attracted to her. So there's benefits, that tangible benefits that many women see. That's why it's very difficult for me to say, do not do this, because there's no, yes, it's harmful, but it's about education, but it's about changing that culture and changing that perception. So that's
something I saw in Brazil. You know, all over the world, people talk about Brazilian women. And to be clear, Brazilian women, some of them are beautiful, some of them are not. But what I found, I have a few friends in the entertainment industry that have tapped into something that have made them a considerable amount of money. And I'm not giving away any industry secrets because they're not my secrets to give away. But I can tell you, there are people that found that in Brazil, these beautiful dark women don't get any real attention. As a matter of fact, there was a very famous case of a woman who became the samba queen for Globo, which is a giant telecommunications company. And after she won the contest, of being a samba queen means you lead the parade, you're in this beautiful dress, and you dance, and it means you're the most beautiful singing, dancing woman that year. And it's an honor and it's fun. And after she won legitimately by being the best at everything, the public as well as backers from Globo said, we don't want her because she's too dark. We want a lighter skinned woman. They took away, it became, here's what ended up happening. It happened with her that is the same thing as when you try to squelch something. They took it away from her, and then the entire world started writing articles about it. The Guardian did a piece on it. It was huge. Like, so they just took it away because you're brown. Yes. Now you have people who are coming to Brazil, finding these women who are just as beautiful as any other woman, except they're black, and using them as their models for their brands and for their things. And no one, and the people in Brazil can't understand why these women are leaving and becoming wildly successful. And like, but she's dark skinned. Not realizing you can take that same woman, put her in any modeling agency in Los Angeles, New York, London, and instantly she's a gold mine. Like, have you seen the internet threads of all these dark women from India and Africa that suddenly have become all the rage? Like, all the modeling houses have finally discovered dark people, and it's hilarious. And you see these women, there's like, there was a woman who took a selfie someplace in Africa, and there was just a woman behind her that was doing, I don't know, shopping or whatever. The entire internet went, who is this woman? She looks like a living doll. And in her world, she's just, they don't say she's pretty or ugly. She's just a dark girl. It's hilarious. Then they find these women, go to their, like, they're sending agents from all over the world to villages and cities all over Africa saying, have you seen this girl? Have you seen her family? Yeah, I have a contract for a few $100,000, which, to be clear, they're undercutting, right? But to give this girl from a village a couple $100,000 to take a bunch of pictures and hold a few products, wear this dress, and it's wild. It's wild.
Yeah, I've noticed that, and that's something I think that's problematic as well, because a lot of those women that you're referring to, and I know the I know of the woman that you're speaking about. She's from Sudan. And now what you're seeing is that now what a lot of these fashion houses are looking for, they're looking for like women that are extremely, and some men, but predominantly women, extremely dark, like really dark in complexion, like, you know, and again, these women are attractive, don't get me wrong, but now people are now pushing this narrative and fetishizing a really dark hue as that this is true blackness. Did you understand what I'm getting? And I find that as well, because for me, it's like, who is controlling this narrative? This is what I'm always pointing to, because now that black has become cool, black has become acceptable because of Black Panther and all of these things, but now they're pushing this, they want this extremely dark, Alex Weck, Lupita looking woman. But we know obviously black women and black people become in many different shades.
Yeah.
So again, and I always question it, I always ask even black people that, even with Lupita Nyong'o, it's only when she was labeled the most beautiful woman in the world by a white Western publication, that's when many black people themselves started accepting her.
Really?
Yes, if you notice, because she was around before. She was born in Mexico. Then she was born in Mexico, but how many people refer to her as Mexican? People always still call her African. She's born in Mexico. Then she spent some time obviously in the UK. Obviously, she's back and forth between the UK, America, but she's a woman of around the world. But she would still be called a Kenyan because of her features. But no one would label her as Mexican, even though she was born in Mexico, or label her Latina, because she doesn't fit.
You know something interesting? I have a few friends in Mexico. As a matter of fact, Roxana, who left that question, she's a Black American woman who's moved to Mexico, and she lives in Mexico now. All over the world, there are colonies of black people that the world conveniently forgets. But here's something interesting. One person wrote an article in one of the international publications that I read, and they said, how come Lupita never speaks Spanish? Remember, she's fluent in Spanish. She was born in Mexico. But part of her curated image, they've completely made sure. And I wonder, if I was a black person in Mexico who's known about her since we ever knew, long before we did, well, why? Why is it that you can't throw a, hey, good morning to all my people in Mexico?
Because she doesn't fit the narrative of what they want to push, of what a Mexican looks like. They want to push this African, like she's the ideal African woman, ideal black woman. Again, don't get me wrong, she's an attractive woman. But again, it's what I'm just questioning. Why is it's only when white people, mainstream media validate someone,
right?
That's when all of a sudden people of the world all now appreciate her beauty. And I'm saying that is what is a problem. So even when we're looking at, and again, like for example, the Rwandan sexual technique I was speaking about, it's only when some mainstream publications from Europe and America started speaking about it, that's when black people in both in America and in Europe were interested in it. So when it's picked up by certain articles, certain outlets like Men's Health, Cosmopolitan, that's when all of a sudden, because it's got a white approval, now black people want to accept it or can accept it. But if an African person was saying it, because there's a number of African, and they were men as well, speaking about some of these practices, people don't want to believe it, because when they think about Africa, the image is poverty, famine, female genital mutilation. You've got nothing that you can teach us. But when it's a white European person that speaks about these issues and they found that they quote unquote discovered it or researched or found these remarkable practices that it does work, all of a sudden now you get a number of black people from the diaspora that's now like, oh really, we want to find out about it. So I'm just, again, that's something that I think, and I'm talking about myself as well, that I have these because I've been conditioned to think a certain way, that when I think about the continent, it's like they are behind us. There's nothing that they can teach us, and unless it comes packaged in a way that is acceptable to me as someone that lives in the UK, then I will accept it. And generally the person that has to be presenting that information has to be a white person, whether it's a white woman or white man. Wow. Have you seen the documentary Sexology? It came out a couple of years ago.
No, I have not.
So it was a documentary by American woman and a British woman where they were speaking to different sex educators around America, primarily around America, trying to find out how a woman can experience orgasm, because as we know from studies, only 30% of women can experience orgasm on a regular basis during penetrative intercourse, and a third of women have never experienced an orgasm or find it difficult to experience orgasm on a regular basis. This is something that many studies have found. So there was one woman who she said that she was in her mid-40s, mid to early 40s. She said that she's even though she's in a relationship, I think she was married, she's found it very difficult. She found it very difficult to experience an orgasm. So herself, along with another woman, they embarked on a journey to speak to a number of sex educators who specialize in tantric sex, neuropsychology, all different things, neuroscientists, to find out how she can have a better sexual experience and ultimately enjoy pleasure, right? And when there was one of the women, Beverly Whipple, who I mentioned earlier, who quote unquote discovered or labeled the G spot after Dr. Grafenberg in 1982.
Right.
She mentioned, like, in parts of West Africa, there are tribes that a lot of women experience ejaculation. They spray the walls. And she unfortunately she labeled the tribe incorrectly, and the practice she referred to as Kachatari or something like that, rather than Kachabali, which is the same as Kunyaza. Now, my point is, it's only when she said that, and because Beverly Whipple is seen as the pioneer of female sexuality in the West, then all of a sudden you see so many media publications, wanting to find out about this African tribe who has a secret to female sexuality and female ejaculation. So again, it's like, why is it it's only when you hear a white person saying it, that's when all of a sudden, and I'm including Black people in the West and in some parts of Africa as well, that's when now they want to find out, is this true? You know, so again, there's a lot of work that needs to be done in terms of changing people's mindset. And I actually wanted to ask you a question about, I read a recent piece about, what's her name? I can't remember her name, but you know, Brazil, they have this Miss Bum Bum competition in Sao Paulo. Yeah. So there was a piece that I came across, I think it was 2 weeks ago, where there was a lady, I can't remember where she's from in Brazil, but she won the last Miss Bum Bum Brazil contest, and she was now saying that she thinks that her bottom is a bit too big. And then one of the organizers was saying this is because of the Kim card, that like in Brazil they like a firm, shapely bottom, but not something that's, you know, gigantic over the top. And he was saying that because of the influence of Kim Kardashian and other social media personalities, people are going to an excess. So even like what's considered to be desirable, even in Brazil, it's changing amongst women. I don't know if you've come across that or what's your thoughts about, because in the UK in particular, everyone's now looking for Brazilian butt lifts, the BBL surgery. Every woman wants, like, you know, this quote unquote Kim Kardashian or Beyonce shaped bottom. So I was just wondering, have you seen any change in attitudes, again, from not only in Brazil, but Americans that are thinking of going to Brazil, in terms of what is like the ideal posterior form of a woman? Or like, what have you seen any change in that?
Well, let me, to be funny, let me back into this conversation. Going all the way back to when we talked about the practices that women have used to manipulate the shape and style of their labia. Brazil is one of the highest destinations. I think maybe South Korea might be number one, and places where cosmetic surgery is a big deal. It's a very big deal. One of the things I love about Brazil is there's a vanity in Brazil. In America, I'm one of the oldest guys in the gym, and I'm not even old. I'm 41. Here, there are men with white hair that are just putting in reps. And I mean, it really changes you. People are concerned with how they look here, much more than the United States. Now, of course, the Western influence, you know, when they had that giant shoot up in their economy, the Burger King came, the Whoppers came. As many people stopped eating the rice and beans for dinner that their mom was making them, and they want a hamburger or a pizza. So when I say that, yeah, there are a lot of people here who do lots of cosmetic surgery. There are a lot of Westerners who come here, and this is a different conversation, not just from cosmetic surgery, but basic human needs. You know, in Brazil, it's one of those other countries more civilized than the United States in certain ways, and that healthcare is not considered a privilege. You know, in Brazil, they may overcharge you for a cell phone, or there may be a lot of other issues, but like most civilized nations, they don't look at healthcare as a privilege. If you go to Brazil and you're in Brazil, whether or not you're even a citizen, you just get healthcare. Brazilian people see healthcare as, you know, when I talk to them about what it's like in America. So do I see it? I'm sure I've seen a lot of it. I know several women that have sat down at different dinner parties that I've been to and get-togethers, just parties at a friend's house. And they, you know, just as men will talk about, oh, there's a new gym I'm going to go to for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, or a weightlifting academy I'm going to take a month and go train with these guys. They often share business cards of, well, this is the doctor that my cousin used to get her breasts done, and here's the doctor that my cousin Suzanne used, and this is the one I'm going to do a butt body lift with, and, you know, so on and so forth. So it's not a big deal. And for the record, I think everybody should have the body they want. But I do see it. I want to be clear. I definitely see it. Do I approve of it? Not my clown, not my circus. I'm a big advocate of, so long as it doesn't hurt anybody else, get the body you want. So do I see it as, if you feel like you must do it? Now we're walking into a different category, because now we're getting into intragender dynamics. There are a lot of unfortunate realities of being a woman that you and I don't suffer from being a man. I wrote an article once, I wrote a couple articles, but a few that really focused on, we can safely say that a woman who was born of average looks has an average life. A woman who was born with above average looks often has access to an above average life. Are you with me on that? Or if you want to, if you want to interject,
I agree.
Okay? No, but the unfortunate reality is a woman born with below average looks has a much, much lower quality of life. First and foremost, because that top 10% of men, she's kind of invisible to them. But even worse, and anybody wants to be mad, feel free. YusefWateef on all social media. Get mad if you want to. Women treat unattractive women horribly. I mean, with a viciousness.
Can you say that again?
Women treat unattractive women horribly. I mean, they go at them with a viciousness that would make the average man just break down and cry. Men are simple. If we don't like each other, we've got two options. Option A, which is 99% of men, I'm not going to talk to you. You're not invited to my barbecue. I never want to see you. Option B, we're going to fight about it, which is rare. But with women, if there's a woman who is unattractive or that they don't like, there's a systematic abuse that they have to go through that is awful. So women's quality of life actually improves if they make themselves more beautiful. And that's something that you and I as men don't really have to get into, because as a man, we've got 5 or 6 different ways to be attractive to all the women in the world. We can be academics. You're a very smart man. That by itself is going to put you in the top 10% of women. You can be in great physical condition. You can be respected by other people if you've accomplished something. Why is it that the #1 chess players in the world have groupies? Think about that for a second. We have so many ways to become attractive, whereas with women, if you are average intelligence, you have average beauty, you have an average life. But if you're below that standard, it really does stunt your social progress and where you're going to get to go. So a lot of young women, that's the only thing that does scare me. I've seen girls talking about doing this 18, 19 years old, in different online forums I'm on and different parties at my friend's house. It's not uncommon for, oh, this is my little cousin Suzette. Oh, Suzette's not going to be around next week because she's going to be recovering. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, does she have some sort of a mind-bending disease? Oh, no, she's going to go get this done and that done. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my goodness, that's terrifying.
That's deep. I mean, what would you say? I'm playing devil's advocate, not that I disagree with what you're saying. Of those women that would say that, but that's because of men. Like, the reason why women treat women that are deemed to be unattractive in a bad light is because they're competing for male attention. So ultimately, men are at fault for that.
Well, let me play. Okay, if you're playing devil's advocate, let me poke a hole in that theory. If it's intragender issues, men don't factor in. Remember, women should want to embrace having a friend. Like, here's an awful term that I've heard women use: thinspiration. Women will often have a woman in their social circle that they don't like who is ugly because they have someone to look better than. Men, we tend to go upward. I want a circle of friends where I am the least educated. I want to be the least physically strong. And I'm a strong, educated man because we're always working up. Men can sit at a round table and say, well, you're good at academic writing. I'm good at persuasive speech. We can come together. Women don't operate that way. Women like to have another woman around that they know can't carry the weight, just to have someone be better than. So it's not about that whole we're both competing for men, because if it was, you would have women not saying anything to the unattractive woman to just let her be the dead weight. But it's a very vicious game. Now, if you talk about why women choose to become more beautiful, yeah, that's competition. That's definitely competition. But they're not being mean to each other for men's sake. Men don't take any perverse. I'm going to use a German word terribly. I think it's Schadenfreude, whatever it is. Men don't take any.
Yes.
Yeah,
Can you explain? I love that word. Can you explain what that word means? Because
well, let me. You know what? Let me Google the pronunciation.
Schadenfreude. What my friend was explain that to me. There's a really good book about it I read a couple of months ago. But I think it's important to explain what that term means.
There's a phrase in German that is the concept. Hold on. It is taking joy, taking joy from seeing someone else in pain. Schadenfreude. Yeah, I'm pronouncing it badly. So if anyone who speaks German, considering it's German, I'm saying it wrong. But this is what I would say: men take no joy in seeing women being cruel to each other. We don't. That doesn't make us value people more. Women do that to each other. Men don't find no enjoyment. No man has ever looked at a woman and found her more attractive because, yay, she's mean to another woman. Matter of fact, we just had Priscilla popped into the chat with a great question. A very pointed question. This is interesting, and I'm going to give this to you, dear brother Habib. Ready?
Yeah,
How do you define a beautiful woman?
How do I define a beautiful woman? For me personally, a beautiful woman was a woman in shape, pretty face. Again, forgive me if I sound a bit graphic, but perky breasts. Not necessarily she has to have a flat stomach, but she hasn't got a large gut. Again, this is for me, how I define a beautiful woman.
You know, you and I are going to have a real long conversation about not giving a fuck if anybody likes what you like.
No, I don't.
How dare you stand there mumbling and apologizing? Listen, it's your dick. Why are you standing there apologizing?
Okay.
Hold on, let me go even deeper on this. You're asking, she asked what is beautiful. You're describing what 99% of men find. You're describing a stereotypical beauty standard.
You know what? Yeah. No, okay, right. Okay, so this is what I find is beautiful, right? And I'm mainly speaking about the physical qualities. But there's also inner beauty. But if I'm being honest, and I think this is the case of most heterosexual men, when they're thinking about a beautiful woman, they're first and foremost thinking about her physical qualities first. That's not to say that her inner qualities are important. So in terms of like character, whether she's truthful, whether she's loyal, that's the most important. That's also important. But if I was going to think about a beautiful woman, first and foremost, I'll be thinking about her physical qualities. It doesn't mean that that's the ideal woman that I want to go for if she's like disloyal or she's got some other inner qualities that is not really compatible with me or what I'm looking for in a partner. But if you're asking ultimately what I consider to be a beautiful woman, it's a woman that's in shape, a woman that's got not a really large behind, but I like maybe because it's my African DNA, but I like a woman that's got a bit of body, right? Junk in the trunk, whatever you want to call it. But I think it's important that more men are speaking honestly and openly about these topics, because what you're finding is that I'm hearing it a lot on, in public forums, and a lot of men, they're just saying what women want to hear. So if that question was posed to a lot of men or like in public, they would say her personality, someone that I can trust, someone that makes me laugh. And for all intents and purposes, that's important, and they are attractive qualities, but they're not the qualities that a lot of men are going for when they're looking for a sexual partner. Let's be honest with ourselves. If they're looking for a beauty, it doesn't mean that she's not a good woman. It doesn't mean a woman who hasn't got the qualities that he finds attractive or desirable, he doesn't find her good as a person. But in terms of when he's looking for a mate, 8 times or 9 times out of 10, he's thinking about the physical qualities. And I think that's something that a number of women find hard to process, because they can appreciate a man's inner qualities, even though if he's physically not what she's looking for. Whereas with a lot of men, if I'm not attracted to a woman, it doesn't matter how much she makes me laugh, how much of a nicer person she is.
Right.
It's not going to go there.
Yeah.
And men, we know that. And that's something which, again, there's some women that are exceptions, but generally, that's how men are. So, and the reason why men are aware of that, that's why if a man, for example, is dating or is with a woman and she's got a friend, but she says, no, he's not my type, other men are still wary of that man as a potential threat, because there's a number of women who might not initially be attracted to a man, but they can fall for him because of his personality, and men were aware of that. So that's why a lot of men will see every man potentially as a threat, because he can have other qualities, like I said, even if he's attractively not her type, which can make her fall for him. Whereas as most men are, if there's a woman that is not physically my type, I'm not attracted to, it doesn't matter how much time we spend together, how much I enjoy her, appreciate her work, I'm not going to fall for her that way. Do you understand what I'm getting?
And you're being absolutely honest, and that's something that I've had long conversations with groups of men, and several times one-on-one with women, because to become successful with women, you have to accept that as a man, to become successful with women, I have to understand who you are, what you think, and the way you think it. For a woman to become successful with men, she doesn't have to learn any of those things, because we provide her the opportunity. When I was taught on how to deal with women, I was taught very early, give every woman you're attracted to the opportunity to say no. So I'm constantly giving chances, whereas they're simply saying, okay, how can I disqualify? And here's the great part, nature set it up that way because it keeps men doing better. So it's a good thing, but this is the other question that Priscilla posted in the chat. What makes a woman ugly?
God, that's what makes a woman dishonesty. Disrespect for me, again, disrespect, because even if a woman is physically attractive, if she's disrespectful, again, that's a big turn off for me. So yeah, disrespect, if she's not loyal, and she's dishonest, yeah, for me, that's what makes her ugly. It doesn't matter how, and again, this might be controversial, but I'll say it anyway, but for me, if a woman is if she's loose, for me, that's a turn off for me.
I don't understand wait, can you? I don't understand what
you hear me. So if a woman who is if she's promiscuous and she's happy to be promiscuous, that's up to her. I've got no issues with that. But for me, that'll be a turn off. So if there's a woman that I see and I'm attracted to her, but she doesn't mind anyone sleeping with her, for me, I don't find her attractive anymore.
Wow. Okay.
That's for me personally. That's me personally. And I think there's some women that have, that's for me.
Hold on.
When you take off your glasses, that means you're really going in.
Let me take the safeties off my shotguns real quick. Here we go. First of all, and feel free, anybody wants to get on my ass about it, leave a comment, blah, blah, blah. I go with the all women are whores theory. All women. That includes. Let me be clear about this. No. I let you ramble. Let me ramble. Because I can stand by my statement and give a clear reason. You can disagree with the reason, but I want to be clear. I've thought this through. And furthermore, let me, while I'm in a hole, let me keep digging. That includes your mother, my mother, Mother Teresa, and the mother of dragons. You know why? Because every man has this fundamental belief that there are two types of women. There's the Madonna, and she's good and she's pure, and that's the one I'm gonna marry. And there's another girl, she's a whore, and we're just gonna have fun, and then I'm gonna throw her away. Women will react to the value proposition that you show them. Most men are so weak-minded that they genuinely believe that when a woman walks up to them, she's not reading you the same way you're reading her beauty. She's sniffing you and reading your mindset. If you're the kind of man who most men are, who need to believe that a certain woman is going to make you wait a few dates before you can kiss her, and you've got to take her out to a nice restaurant before you can do this, and then after a certain elapsed point of time, she makes you wait for sex, and even then it's going to be blah, 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 stereotypical, Friday afternoon soap opera sex. That's bullshit. When a woman looks at you and says, wait a minute, this man won't judge me poorly and it won't get around to my friends. If I like him, I can just have sex with him after we just have lunch together. And that's not a type of woman. That's not a good woman or a bad woman. That's women. But most men don't have a security in who they are because they say, oh, well, if she does that with me, she's disqualified. Let me tell you something. The woman that every man married, no matter what you'd like to believe, you didn't marry a virgin, you didn't marry a woman without any experience, because what we tend to forget, every woman has had every opportunity she's ever wanted to experience every possible variation of sex. Why? Because every man she's ever met has offered it to her since she was 18 years old. So it's not as if, or what?
Or even like maybe as young as 14, 15 if she's attractive, to be honest.
Jesus fuck, why would you just
No, I said she's had opportunity. So let's be honest, women from the ages of like 14, 15 years old, they have grown men approaching them. So they have the opportunity.
Well, okay, that's true. That's a different podcast.
I'm saying that. Right.
That's a different podcast, my dear friend. But what I can tell you is this. Here's where we are.
I need to get back on that all women are whores because I disagree with that. I definitely disagree with that.
Okay. Well, here's the problem. Everybody wants to believe, like I said, they want to believe that they're going to have this discernment that this woman is different from that woman. The reality is this: what are the options that you gave her? Did she look at you and think?
No, because I think with men as well, I do agree that most men are weak-minded, or a lot of men are weak-minded. But to say that, I'm not saying that I expect a woman to be, a virgin, or she's inexperienced sexually, or she hasn't got desires. No, I understand that I haven't got an issue with a woman's sexual past. I'm speaking about, even as a man, if a woman looks at a man and she finds that he's sexually weak, like any woman that comes near him, he's ready to, risk the relationship and sleep with her, she would lose respect for him. A number of women would.
Well, let me ask you a quick question.
I don't think that's wrong with that. Like
let me ask you a quick question. When you say you don't want a woman, and I'm going to use the word you use, you said who's loose. Didn't you use that word?
Yeah, maybe I shouldn't use that word, but that's the
now. Here's my question. No. Let me go in with this. How do you define loose? Can you give me a number? How do you discern it? You are a man of critical thinking. Okay. I want you to tell me that when you went to the club, the bar, your friend's barbecue, and you met this girl, how do you decide if she's loose or not?
Okay, I wouldn't know from my first interaction with her, but if a woman is, for example, she's in a relationship, and just say I'm with her, just say I'm away, and she's maybe sexually frustrated, so because I can't give her what she needs, and I'm not going to be back in the country or to see her for another couple of weeks, okay, I'll just sleep with any other guy because I've got those needs. The same way some men are, like there are a lot of men, I would say men are more loose than women, I can understand why a lot of women wouldn't be attracted to that sort of man, because you haven't got self-restraint. Do you understand? So I would, rather than saying a woman is loose, I'd say a woman who lacks self-restraint sexually. And I think that's
But
unattractive quality.
Here's
That's
my question. No. Here's my question. How do you find out? Do you believe that you've devised some sort of a mechanism that's going to tell you that this woman is loose or not? Show me how, because men have tried to figure this out since the beginning of time, because we're all dumb enough to believe.
No, I wouldn't know off the bat or from speaking to her, the same way you wouldn't know if someone is dishonest.
Right.
Do you understand? You can speak to someone. How would you know if someone, unless they've showed dishonesty to you, or someone that you trust and respect has told you that, I've told you that person's dishonest. Do you understand? And that's why, you know, men carry out due diligence checks and women carry out due diligence checks by trying to find out about that person's past. Now, I'm not to say that someone could have been dishonest or promiscuous in the past. It doesn't mean they're that way inclined now, but that does come into consideration when people are reviewing or evaluating the way the person's character is today, and we can't pretend that we don't. That's not the case. Now, to make it out like, and I think what you said sounds really good, but if I'm being 100% honest with you straight up, I think that's not true. I don't think you're being completely honest with you. Maybe you're not completely honest with everyone, because number one, I definitely wouldn't say all women are whores, and I don't think you really.
Well, here's the thing.
And,
what I'm doing,
and then if you're looking for, yes, I can understand what you're saying. You meet a woman, you're vibing, you want to have a sexual experience with her. She doesn't mind having a sexual experience with her. You're not going to judge her. Then let's get on. Fine, right? And I think that's the way you're coming from it. Like, and you won't judge her, which is fine. But if maybe you're looking for a life partner, there's certain other characteristics that you're looking at, both you as a man and she as a woman. So as a woman, I can understand why a woman might not be attracted to, in terms of a long-term partner. I'm not speaking about a casual hookup, a guy that's having relations with a number of women, like he's sexually weak. And there are a number of men that are sexually weak, that if an attractive woman were to message him in his direct message, all of a sudden he'll sacrifice the relationship in order to have this 10 minutes, 15 minutes of passion. Now, I'm saying for a woman, for a lot of women, that's unattractive. And I'm saying same way for a number of men, that is unattractive. I'm not saying if you're...
Okay, let me back up. What I'm saying, when I say all women are whores, we have to be clear. I'm using what we call argumentum ad absurdum. It's the Latin for argument to absurdity. I'm giving you a really condensed issue.
You don't think it's a dangerous statement?
Say again?
You don't think it's a dangerous statement and an inaccurate one as well?
No. Is it dangerous? Yes. Is it inaccurate? No. Because what we need to, what most men, not women, what most men need to understand, particularly in 2019, the odds that she has said no to the things that she has wanted simply don't exist. Now, we do understand that women are smart enough, and in relationships much smarter than men, to understand, what do I want from this guy? If you're the guy she looks at and says, okay, I want to be with him for the long term, the first thing she's going to say is, what type of woman does he need in order for that to be possible? Most men need to believe that you were this chaste girl of a particular da-da-da-da until a certain time. And nature made absolutely sure men can't figure any of that out. That's the one good thing that nature made sure of. So it's like when you meet a woman, to have any even question, I never even questioned a woman's sexual past. Why? Do you believe any woman in history has ever been honest about it? Men lie about their sexual past too, because men lie up, women lie down. Men say things like, yeah, I had 4 girlfriends and 3 of them were this. And this one girl, she was this model, and the other girl was this model, and this other girl, she bakes me cookies while I'm having sex with the other girl. Men lie up, women lie down. They say, no, I normally don't let guys do that, and I don't let them put it in there. We're all lying. So when you ask a person a question about their sexual history, it's never going to be the truth, especially if they look at you and say, hey, this is someone I want around. What is going to be most acceptable to them?
That's a blanket statement. To say that everyone lies about their sexual history, that's not the case. In certain cultures, yes, maybe, yeah, in certain cultures, because again, in the Western culture where women are, and not only the Western culture, but a number of cultures where we police female sexuality and women are expected to be chaste and not have multiple sexual partners. That's why you do find, of course, I understand why a lot of women lie, but there are other cultures around the world where that's not the case. Do you understand what I'm getting at? So I think even we have to be careful when we're saying this and qualify when we're saying all women are whores, or all women lie, or men lie up and women lie down. That's not, maybe in certain cultures that's the case, but that's not the case around the world, because there are certain cultures where like women can have multiple partners and men are happy with that. So there's no reason for a woman to lie about her sexual past. And also the idea that every woman...
Okay, wait, let me back up for a second.
The idea that every woman is going to want to experience... Because remember, there's other factors, that there's some women that do not engage in sexual practices, even though they've got the desire to do so, because they've got other factors which prevent them from doing so, whether it's because they fear the repercussions of their family, tradition, maybe their religious beliefs. So this idea that everyone, and I think that's something that from a Western perspective, we need to come out of that, because there's a number of women, like for example, there's in the Muslim community, right? There's a number of women, particularly originally from Asian background and Arab. They do not engage in penetrative intercourse, the women that is, but they'll engage in anal intercourse because they're worried that if the hymen is broken, which again, that's a problematic topic altogether to know whether a woman has had a hymen broken, but they wouldn't engage in penetrative intercourse, vaginal intercourse, but they engage in anal intercourse because they're worried, because if they were to have sex before marriage and then they'll marry another man, there could be serious implications that, i.e., like they can be killed.
Well, hold on. Let me back up. When you talk about women, you talk about these Muslim women from these countries. I want to overqualify your statement. I'm going to overqualify your statement by saying you just described every quote unquote conservative religion. Catholic girls in the United States, it's extremely common knowledge because the Catholic, and anybody who wants to get mad at me, YusefWateef, fuck you. The Catholic Church is an organization dedicated to the rape and protection of child rapists and promotes some of the worst sexual ideologies ever. So Catholic children come out destroyed, and Catholic girls come out freely enjoying because they're taught vaginal sex is the only thing that counts. In high school, we knew that the girls who were the most sexually adventurous all came from Catholic schools.
Ooh. Yeah, but that's again, but you're speaking in a particular context in the Western world. And you're speaking about one religion. So because that's the case in the Western world, in Catholicism, it doesn't mean that's the case with all conservative religion around the world. That's my point. So you're speaking about one religion in one part of the world, and then you're trying to say that's the case for women all over the world. So yes, we do know, and I'm not saying that's not the case in parts of the Middle East and with some Muslim girls, that because they've been sexually, they've repressed their desires, then it comes out in different ways, and people know that. But to say that all church girls, all Catholic girls, they're the freakiest, they're this, they're that, that's wrong. And I think to say that's a dangerous statement.
Well,
there are some. So I just think we again, you're an intelligent person, and I just think what happens is that
debatable. That's fucking debatable.
No, you're intelligent, and you know what you're saying, and you're clever with what you're saying and what you're spouting, even though you know that it will get people's attention, and then hopefully you're looking at it as, like I would say, like a hook for them people to listen on. But a statement as blindly to say something like all women are whores, that is inaccurate on so many levels. Because okay, first I'll ask you, what do you please define me? What is a whore? Please define what a whore is.
It's exactly what you said when you described a woman as loose. When you said, "Well, she's this and she's that." When I say, let me do it this way. When I say yes, all women are whores, it's a mindset that you have to have going into any interaction where you just have to assume, yes, she's had lots of sexual encounters. No, there's nothing you can do about it. You'll never be her first, but maybe if you're a good lover and you learn the squirting techniques in your clever book. Hold your book up again for us. I'm gonna give you a shameless plug again while I say this. And I left the link in the thing. Yes, you might not ever have been her first, but if you learn the Kunyaza book techniques, maybe you can be her last. But only naive men with very low experience as women go into these situations thinking, I'm going to talk to her about her sexual past and use that to decide whether or not. First of all, if you approach this woman, you're already hooked. Because you're not going to be, no man has ever become less attracted to a woman when he found out she wasn't a virgin or that she had sex with other women. I mean, with other men or women. It just doesn't really happen that way, although we try to be noble and say, yeah, that's definitely going to. No, it's not. Men like
as a life partner. Because remember, as men, and let's be honest with ourselves, we know there are some women, some women they're attracted to, but we know that this is just for a casual relationship. It's not going to go anything past that. It's not going to. So there's some women we view as sexual partners, some women we view as potential life partners. Like whether it's a girl,
most men have. They don't want.
Why is it a problem? No, why is it a problem? Same with some women, they can have that. They have some men for fun, and some men they'll look at as potential like baby fathers and potential husbands.
Well, here's the thing.
We don't look at every person the same.
I do agree. If men are using the wrong criteria. The criteria that we should be using, if this woman is going to be the woman who, and I always call it the wake up next to me test, the woman who wakes up next to me, not necessarily the woman I had fun sex with, even though she should have been, is she loyal? Is she obedient? Is she honest? Those are the criteria. I don't care what she did before she met me. Before she met me, she might have never met a great man before. But I'm telling you, I might not have been her first lover, but maybe I'll be her last. And every time I have sex with her, I'm going to try, again, using the advanced techniques in your book. Every time I have sex with her, I'm going to try and have sex with her in a way that makes her say, you know what? This is the real deal. Why do so many men are concerned with the past? Why don't you set a standard for yourself and say, I'm going to change my criteria from sex to what kind of mind does she have? Can she help I'm sorry.
Ego. It's ego. It's ego, yes. And a lot of men, we've got insecurities as well. Like yes. You mentioned earlier, we have got a lot of insecurities because if you were to ask a lot of men, would they settle with a woman who had sexual relations with their friend? A lot of men, they couldn't do that because just the thought of, even though it happened in the past, just the thought of a man having his woman having relations with his friend, he couldn't deal with that. Whether that's right or whether that's wrong, but a lot of men, our ego is important for us to function. Do you understand? Again, we need to have pride. Now, I'm not saying that, again, we should be realistic, and I'm not saying that a man should only be with a woman or only find women that are attractive that are completely chaste and had no sexual experiences, because he's living in like la la land. That doesn't exist. But he has got a crime. If he doesn't want a woman who maybe has slept with his friend, what's wrong with that? The same way if a woman doesn't want to have a relationship with a man who's slept with her friend, she's well entitled to have that because she doesn't want to have something. She doesn't want to have the thought of something so close to home that it can kick off again, kind of thing. So to say that it's wrong for men to have this criteria, then I'll say to you,
I think we're conflating issues.
And I'll say to you, who are you then to say this is what men should have as a criteria? If that's how a man wants to choose his life, if that's what a man is looking for, or if what a woman's looking for in terms of characteristics, who are you to say this is what a man should have? A man should have these qualities. What he's looking for in a sexual partner should be the same as what he's looking for in a long-term partner.
I'll tell you why. So, if I didn't get so many emails and letters and comments on my writings about what am I doing wrong and how come I can't find that special girl, and then 3, 6, 9 months later, with this mind-blowing revelations that I give them on changing the standards they have for themselves and looking at women differently, then they say, oh, the world opened up for me. The only thing I have, listen, I'm just a back porch philosopher who a lot of men over the years have found they can come to for clear, evidence-based and reason-based discussions on life, making money, women. I'm not telling you I'm perfect. And you know what? I'm not the right teacher for everybody. But when I got to a point in my life where young men said, I want you to mentor me. I do paid mentorships because it got to the point where it was so expansive. Where I work with someone, and when I tell people I want to work with them as a mentor, the first conversation we have is I want to do this for about 6 months. If after 6 months, I haven't helped you, either I'm not the right teacher, you're not the right student, but I'm not going to keep taking money from somebody forever. I'm not a psychiatrist. I don't want a long-term client. But what I also say to them is, this is when you ask me what qualifies me, if I hadn't helped so many men find the light and come to that realization, especially early in life, because for me, the advantage I have wasn't that I learned it, because all men learn it. But when men don't learn these things until it's after they're 40-something years old, if they don't learn this until after they've been burned by a bunch of different women, until after they've lost things financially, or even worse, after they've lost their dignity and their respect, those are when men turn to the evil side of the force. Those are when men become the abusers and hurters of women. And there's nothing more dangerous than a man who becomes enlightened on the true nature of women after he's already been hurt, because those men use the force for evil. Consider that my ability to be open and honest about my beliefs on the internet forever, where somebody's recording this right now, is a testament to I lead this life. And I'll never have anyone in a situation to say, well, that's not how he really is, because I can say it openly. Most men can't. But when you do cross that line and say, this is how people behave, women don't find me less attractive because I understand women. They find me dangerous because they get a little uncomfortable and I know certain things, but it doesn't make you less attractive. It doesn't make you less attractive to say, these are the kind of women I like. Unapologetically, for you, I want you to get to a point where you can say, yep, this is the kind of woman I like. And if you don't like it, yeah, fuck you, at me. But and think about it. You work for yourself. You work for yourself.
No, I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
No, I hear what you're saying. I appreciate your honesty and your frankness, and I think it's important that even and as men we need to check each other. And I think it's good that you're checking me in a way that you think that you're correct, and I will try and check you in a way that I deem to be correct. But I just think, coming back to your statement, oh no, I want to ask you about the dark side. What are the dark forces that you said that men can? What can that lead to? Is that emotional abuse, physical abuse, or other things? What?
All of those things. I've seen men, once they realize that there's a very specific set of behaviors that, I'm not saying all women, but the stunning and overwhelming majority, if we go by that Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule, 80% of women are going to fall for men that display a certain set of qualities. And the good news is, as men, you can learn any of those things: physical fitness, respected in your, all those things. But once they learn how to make women look at them and choose that man to say, I want to open my heart and my legs for this man, and more importantly, my mind. They take that information and then they use it for evil, and they draw women in and they just batter them because they're thinking about the first girl who he told he loved and then found her, you know, after waiting 3 months to have sex with her. He walks in and finds all of his buddies running a train on her in her apartment when he came to surprise her. These are real things that have happened that I've heard of, you know, and this is not by any way unique. You know, those guys who find out after the woman who has left him and financially just raped him in court finds out afterwards she'd been setting that up for 6 months. Every time she laid down with him, every time they had sex, every time she kissed him. But now he's figured out how the game works, and he's going to go out there and abuse as many women as he can to make up for it, trying to fill that hole in his heart. But if you understand how it works earlier, you know, I have people that say to me, well, what? You know, women are this and women are that. And I say, slow down. Don't be angry at women. I love women. Well, don't you think women should change? I love women just the way they are because they don't pose a problem for me. But most men that they do find a problem, that they pose a problem for, they find out later in life, because men don't learn by having nice things happen to them. That's the way the world works. That's the way nature has designed us. We only get better at fighting after getting punched in the head a couple times. We only start learning how to communicate with other men after, again, getting punched in the head for saying the wrong thing. You either get tough or learn when to talk and when not to. We don't learn how to swim until, oh, I almost drowned. I need to learn this shit. We don't learn about women until, and this goes to another conversation we can have. So many of us don't have the father's knuckles in our community to teach us that masculinity isn't to be feared. Masculinity is what civilized the world. Masculinity, you know, isn't being weak. Masculinity is being strong and using that strength in the right way. By the way, those things attract women. But we don't want to hear that. All they want is, why don't I change? And when I found out. So when you ask when men turn to the dark side, when you hear about those men who go on these shooting rampages when they shoot women, or men who go in and do the murder-suicide when, here's one thing that's come up big in the United States and in the UK, paternity fraud. I had a client, I worked in the financial business for many, many years as securities, mutual funds, whole life insurance, helping people pay less in taxes. I had a client who was a pediatrician, a baby doctor. And I went to his office one day for some paperwork. And he said, I got to go to a conference next week. And I said, oh, what's it for? Are you learning some new technique on saving children? He said, no, we got to sit down and talk to the lawyers. And I got really afraid. I thought maybe that they were being sued. He said, no, there's this issue that keeps coming up. I'll tell you about it when I come back. He comes back, we sit down, have coffee. Said they had to have the lawyers give them the official company policy on what to do when a man brings a baby in and asks for a paternity test. And that paternity test says the child really isn't yours. And I said, really? This happens? He said, you know what? One of the things that modern technology has given us, 20 years ago, it took blood tests in 2 weeks to find out paternity. Now they can take a swab, stick it in the baby's mouth, stick it in your mouth, stick it into a magic machine, and it goes bing, and it tells you with billions of % of accuracy if this baby yours or not. I said, so what's the issue? He says, what do you do when the test says this is not his child? Do you give the baby back? Do you keep the baby? The lawyers told them official policy is, unless that man threatens the life of the child or the child's mother, you hand him his baby and his test results, you smile and give him a nice day. Because as baby doctors, they feel this protection, you know? And then he asked me a question that made my head explode. He said, you know, what percentage of people do you think are really not fathered by the men that they think they are? I want your opinion on this.
What's the percentage? I don't know, like 15%?
25.
Or 10%? 25%.
But here's the interesting part. Now, here's the philosophy that he and I sat down with and tried to be smart about. He said, is this number a new number that's a result of the world we live in, or has that number been a constant number throughout history and we only now have the technology to detect it? And he said, as a physician, his professional opinion, the numbers are stable. From his life experience as a scientist and as a physician and doing multiple research and books on lots of different things, he says, human behavior is actually fairly consistent throughout history.
Yeah, I agree.
But now we finally figured it out. Do you know how many men have had to go to court over this? And they're losing. Judges are saying, you accepted this as your child 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 30 years ago. Now you still have to pay that child support if you get divorced. The news doesn't report this, but you can go on the internet and find dozens of cases. And it justifiably drives these men to commit horrific acts. Could you imagine finding out that this child who you've loved and cared for was actually not even yours? Because as a woman, she understood, I like this guy as the man who will provide for me, but I don't want to have his child. I'd much rather it be that guy who I'm genuinely attracted to. It's a crazy world we live in, but most men don't think that way, so they get taken for a ride. You know, and I'm having a difficult discussion with a dear friend of mine whose girlfriend is pregnant. And I looked down at him and I said, I'm taking my glasses off because I'm aware you and I might get into a fight. And both of us are, you know, amateur fighters. We are both dangerous men. I says, I love you, so I'm going to say something. And if you have to hit me, one of us is probably going to the hospital, but I accept that. Are you going to make sure that you have a paternity test after your girlfriend has this baby? And that was one of the most terrifying experiences of my adult life, because neither one of us are meant to be taken lightly. And we sat in silence for a few seconds to where it became uncomfortable. And he says, I don't think that's necessary because, and I said, fuck you and fuck what you think. You and I have been friends long enough to not be nice about shit. This is a girl you met, you had sex with, and now she's pregnant. Do you think she's special? Are you going to look me in the eye and tell me she's different? Do you think you're the first guy that she decided, you're so magic, I'm going to let you not use a condom? And I provoked him to the point where he says, okay, fine, maybe you're right. Don't maybe. I want to hear you say it. And we're going to have that conversation again after this baby is born.
Why did you ask that question? I mean, were not going to too much detail of their relationship? Was it because he got her pregnant after recently meeting her? Was they in a long-term relationship? Like, what?
Yeah.
Oh, he got her pregnant after recently meeting her. Like,
Well,
would you ask that question if he was with her for like 3-4 years, and I know it's difficult to know, but you didn't see any obvious signs which would make you think that she might have had another sexual partner? So I'm just asking.
Here's right, devil's advocate. This is men's stupidity. There are no outward signs. Men are good at certain things and women are good at certain things. It's not right or wrong. Men got what they want with this right here, right? Smashing down doors and stabbing people until I got it. Women aren't strong and they're not big. How did women get what they want? Through guile and cunning. We don't want to talk about that. But you know what? Nature gives every animal a tool that needs to survive. Bears are big and they have claws and jaws, right? Spiders are tiny, but they poison you to death. She, you know, and here's the thing. He is a smart, educated, financially successful man. When a woman says, I want a child with a man, he's the man they're looking at. And I've had the same conversation with some of my younger cousins. When a girl says, I want to get pregnant, they're talking about you.
Mm. So would you advise every man that when he finds that his partner's pregnant, like wait until he's seen something which maybe, you know, maybe makes him think maybe that child is not mine? I'm just asking, like, was that what advice would you give to men in general, like who are soon to be fathers, or they think they're soon to be fathers? Would you say they should all have paternity tests, or only have a paternity test when there's some element of doubt, or when they're not sure about the woman's intentions or her?
Well, again, everybody feel free to get mad. You can at YusefWateef on all social media. 100% of men should check. Let me say that again. 100% of men. Because none of us are smart enough to know. Don't let your ego get you jammed up. And again, part of this is, let me tell you how I'm jaded. I worked in the financial industry long enough to have sat across my office table with so many men who are in that stage of life where they found out a child that wasn't theirs, or they're getting divorced and found out this woman had set up, you know, to financially rape him, not fairly, but unfairly for years. I'm telling you that as men, none of us are smart enough to know what a woman is thinking. I'm smart enough to know how dumb I am as a man, because we got all our skill points in muscle and penis. That's it. That's what we got. I'm not complaining about how we got it, right?
Okay, what percentage of women would you say are faithful?
Well, hold on a minute. Now we're going back to my original thesis statement. Now we're going back. We're going back to my original statement when I say all women are whores. All women aren't whores. All women aren't whores. But I assume everyone is. That way I don't make a mistake in believing that maybe she's special and she's different.
Wow.
I love.
Did you have bad experience? Did you have a bad experience?
That's the reason people come to me for advice. They say, Wateef, you're this wild man who does all these crazy things that we think are weird, but how is it you can say these things? Because I've never had that bad experience. And I was taught by men older and wiser than me thin things from the beginning.
No, but I appreciate your honesty, your brutal honesty, but to think that all women are, I understand, like it's like if you're going with the assumption that all women are whores, so if a woman shows you that she is a whore, then you won't be upset by it because that's what you went in the beginning, right? So understand that it makes sense, and you won't be sat in the way of protecting your heart or protecting your emotions. That's a clever way of going about it. But when they go with the opposite, they think that all women are chaste unless they've seen otherwise. But you're going with it like in a way you're thinking everyone is dishonest. So if you're in business dealings and someone proves to be dishonest to you, you're not going to be upset or you know, found out thing that the person betrayed you, because you think that you're going into like relationships. It sounds like from a negative perspective.
But here's the thing. I'm not going into anything negative because here's the thing. I treat women amazingly well. Women are always surprised and go, I thought you were going to be a savage. Well, I am, but I'm not going to put myself in a situation to get burned later, so I can treat you amazingly well. But here's the thing. This knowledge, this way of thinking has let me open up my heart to women in a way that most men can't because I've set up safeguards to make sure I don't get screwed later.
Right. I hear that. But what makes you think that all women, again, that statement, what makes you think that all women are whores?
Here's the thing. Again, I'll explain it to you 3 different ways. You're just hoping that at some point I'll change my theory because, I don't know, it'll make you feel better. I've explained it to you 3 different ways, and as a man of letters and as a man of critical thinking, you understand exactly what I'm saying, just as all the people listening do. You're just hoping that maybe I'll step back and say no. But again, here's the privilege of being your own man. I don't have to step back from any of my words. And that's what I'm saying this again. I appreciate we're having this conversation. I think this is the type of conversation that we need to have more of. And this is a good thing when men get together, is that, like you said, you can say something, I can say something, we can both disagree, but still respect each other. But unfortunately, what you find in like nowadays, like when you see men speaking in public, is everyone is saying they're dancing to the tune of women. They're saying what women want to hear. So what you're saying, some women will agree, some women will disagree, some women might agree with me. Let me give you my closing statement. Let me give you my closing statement. When you say that they stand out in public and they want to dance to say what women want to hear, they do that thinking that women will find them more attractive because they roll over and show their belly like a puppy and say, look at me, I'm not dangerous. When in fact, what they don't understand is the same women who publicly shame them aren't shaming them because they really believe that what they're saying is wrong. They're filtering out the weak men so that they can know who to slide in on the DMs later, who they can accidentally bump into in the supermarket and smile because that guy's not afraid, because when she chooses, if she's choosing right, if a smart woman is choosing right who to open her legs, heart, and mind for, they're not choosing the weak men who back down at the first sign of controversy. Those aren't the men they commit to.
Fair point. Last thing I wanted to say, I wanted to get your thoughts on like the Me Too movement and the Gillette ad. I don't know if you saw that.
Here we go.
Where they're trying to read. What's your thoughts on?
They did
like, are they redefining masculinity? And
yeah, but here's why I didn't even write anything about it. I don't give a fuck what somebody else thinks about my masculinity. Like, I genuinely wake up every morning hoping that a bunch of weak men read that, change their behavior, become less attractive, and there's more for me. So if you want to follow some online ad or some company that puts some propaganda out there to convince you that being masculine is bad, good. I want you to follow that bullshit advice so that you are no longer competition for me. I hope you find every one of those soft-hearted, impotent, limp dick man who says, no, I should, like, there was a part that my friend showed to me online. The part that got me is there's a beautiful woman that walks by. A guy goes to walk to say hello to her, and his friend says, no, don't say that. If any man ever put his hand on me to try to say, don't talk to this woman, we would have, like, I wake up ready. So I would look him in the eye and I'll say, I want to make this abundantly clear. Under no circumstance can you ever touch me. And if you ever try to police my behavior, it's just going to be on immediately. And I'm telling you, and I would say I'm telling you this because as a friend, and I hope it's a friend, not some stranger, as a friend, a colleague, I don't want it to go there. But when I see a woman that I enjoyed looking at, I'm going to give her the opportunity to say no to me. That's why I'm happy in life. I don't live life worried about what other people think. And if it goes bad, here's the difference. I'm willing to accept the consequences of my behavior. But I won't go down without a fight. I'm not the toughest kid in the lunchroom. I never was. But after being that kid who got beat up I just don't want to be the one you look at and say, it's going to be easy to take his lunch. That's all. I just want you to wake up and say, you know what? If I'm going to screw somebody over, there are easier marks than that guy, YusefWateef. He kind of grew up into a guy. Listen, this is what happens when you do have men who can teach you about masculinity. And part of it is I was a blank slate as a child. Remember, I was the fat kid who got beat up. My parents made sure I was a nerd, which I didn't learn until later in life was the whole plan. It's a good thing. I wet the bed till I was 15 years old. There was no place I had to go but up. But once I figured it out, once those older men who told me after I got older, and they were like elderly, they said, we realized you had nothing to do. You had no choice but to listen. I didn't have any of the advantages that my cousins have had. I wasn't born with a six-pack, a beautiful smile. I'm not exactly a nice person to be around. So they said, this young man, he's got nothing to do but listen. And when I did, life changed. When I went to college, my whole experience was different. As I grew into manhood, my experience was different. By the way, Faith Jefferson, shout out to Faith Jefferson. She said, or he, I don't know if it's a he or she, totally agree, just as a prenuptial agreement is required 100% of the time. In the United States, it is. It is. Because again, women being smarter than men, the smart women pick a winner early in the race. They're walking around that racetrack before the race starts, smelling the horses, looking at which one is scraping the ground, which one is peeing, which one looks nervous. Smart women, not all women, just the smart ones. I got into a conversation about, and this is a loaded conversation, a different conversation. We're gonna have a couple conversations. She said, "Why do all these successful black men only marry white women?" And another one of my friends pointed out, he says, "If you ever go online and look at it, these women picked these guys back when they were nobodies." I went to school with white women who told me all, and again, women have different conversations when they realize you're never going to be that guy for them. They can speak to you more honestly when they say, well, he's never going to fall for the bullshit anyway. Their mothers told them from the beginning, listen, have fun in college, but you are looking for a PhD and an MRS degree. Look for those young men who you say are going to be successful in life. Catch one early. And the smart ones did. The smart ones had that mom that said, listen, while you're in college, you're in a fertile territory. Pick that guy that you know, pick the right major, has some potential, and show him early. They were out there, you know, all the other girls are still in the amateur leagues. These girls are 18, 19, 20 years old. Their mother turned them pro. Their mothers, not their fathers, their mothers turned them pro early. You're out there looking for a husband. And it didn't bother them if the guy was black or white. They're like, I want a man that's going to make a lot of money and be successful. And all I'm going to do is tell them the same lies that smart women have told men from the beginning of time. You're the funniest, your dick is the biggest, and you're the most amazing man in the world. And we all believe it. Shit, I know how the game works. And I still believe when women tell me that bullshit. But I know my weakness. Most men don't. And most women are smart enough to know that because they want us to be just as complex as they are, when we're not.
So, but why? Okay, I understand why, from what you're saying, why white women choose successful black men, but why do successful black men not choose black women?
Well, there are a couple of answers to that. I'll give you the one that a couple of my friends have always went with. We live in an age where, particularly my set of friends, we tend to be international. We tend to be the men who travel. We tend to be the men who start to see the world early. Some people say, well, you want a white woman as a trophy, but some men are free to the point where they can say, hey, some guys like tall girls, some guys like short girls, some girls like fat girls, some guys like skinny girls. Doesn't really matter. They just have the confidence to say, oh, this is the woman who treated me the way I wanted to be treated. Game over. Well, okay. That's it. I mean,
yeah. So you don't think again, I'm generalizing, but successful black men disproportionately date outside the race more than men of other races? Do you think they're all looking for the same thing?
I think they do. And in the United States, one of the issues that we keep coming up with is that a lot of black men, like I said, are A, getting picked early, but B, oh, this is a different conversation entirely. And I've got a few people who've messaged me saying they wish they'd gotten on earlier. You and I got to start wrapping it up. I've got stuff to do, and I know you do too. Yeah. You know what? Let's save that. Let's put a ribbon on that. So what are the things we got to talk about during our next discussion? We got to talk about the disproportionate dating outside the race. If you want to go back into the women whore theory, we can do that. What else do we need to talk about next time?
Why men pay for sex. That's something I don't understand.
What? How do you not understand why men pay for sex?
Maybe again, because it's the ego thing. Because for me, I understand it. Like I can understand theoretically. I can understand why a man pays for sex, but as a man, for me, it's like the pleasure is in the chase. And obviously, I know some people might not like the choice of words of conquest, but men seek satisfaction in that.
Stop qualifying the words you use. It is conquest. We're men. Okay. We conquer things.
Okay. Like the idea of you like to eat what you kill. That's going back to hundreds of years. That's what men like. You seek gratification in. Yeah. You're eating what you kill, right? Whether that man being the hunter, what have you. Whereas the idea, like the same way, I don't understand or respect a man who can eat, who can be someone that accepts charity when he's able to work. Do you understand that? That doesn't want to make his own bread. The same way with women. The same way with women. I can understand it because again, if a man's busy, if he's got all of these other things, but then, it's easy transaction rather than going on dates, rather than seducing and romancing a woman. I'll just pay for that transaction. But for me as a man, it's something that you should earn. The same way I don't respect a man who forces himself on a woman. I don't respect. I can understand it, but I don't understand really why.
Here's the problem, though. You're conflating two issues. No. You're doing a false equivalence.
I'm not saying. Sorry, I'm not making sure it's clear. I'm not saying that a man who forces himself on a woman is the same as a man that pays for sex. I'm not saying that.
No, I'm just saying
there's certain characteristics that I would expect as a man. Like for example, I respect or don't understand a man that doesn't provide for his family.
Right. But here's the question I'm going to ask you, right?
Selfish,
here's the thing. Let me tell you, because I mean, I've seen enough of life in the world to tell you, here's how I look at it. Think of the last woman you had sex with. Ready?
Yeah.
Did you pay for that sex with money or time?
Time.
Which is more valuable to you, money or time?
Hey, time is more valuable.
Okay, so why did you pay the most expensive price?
Why did I pay? Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah, exactly.
Because,
hold on. Okay. No. We gotta go. We gotta go. I'm gonna let you think about that. I'm not, because here's the thing. I'm not telling you it's right or it's wrong, but I'm telling you, you just answered the question. Did you pay with money or time? You said time, and then I asked you which is more valuable to a man, money or time. So why did you choose to pay the most expensive price? So let that sink in.
I can answer that. I can answer that.
No. We got to give him a reason to come back. Right?
Tune in the next episode and you'll find out.
Yeah, because all my friends, you know, that are in show business, they say you always leave them wanting a little bit more, right? So this is what we're going to do. One, I want you to share this. I want everybody to share this on all their social media. Feel free to at me any questions or anything like that. Two, I need you to think of a friend, and I want you to take some time and I want you to text me. Tell me about somebody I should have on this show that's an interesting person, somebody who likes to have talks and discussions. Man, woman, conservative, or liberal. I don't really care. I just like people who think. Is that all right, Brother Habib?
Yeah, I can definitely do that, and I'll get back to you on some people that I think would be good for you to speak to.
All right.
Strong, opinionated people like yourself.
All right. Listen,
I enjoyed this.
You have a great day. I hope everybody has a great day. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.